like the California gold rush, right? You have all these mines and like everyone's running there, and you think that all the miners are making money to get there once they've got there. And it's not true. It's like the miners didn't actually make that much money from the California gold rush. It was the people that were selling the equipment to the miners trying to make money who made all the money. And I feel like we're in this kind of state right now. Everyone's investing in crypto thinking it's going to make a quick buck or a big return of investment and all this kind of stuff. But really, it's the people that are selling it and the people that are facilitating the exchange of the cryptocurrencies that are making all the money right now.
Welcome to another episode of the Untangling Web3 podcast. Alec, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. It's getting darker much earlier these days, so I've got a bit of mood lighting going on to compensate for that. But otherwise, good. How are you doing, Jack?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. We've got to the part of the year where actually staying in at night and podcasting doesn't seem like we're missing out. There's not as much FOMO at the minute, so that's nice.
We can actually justify sitting in our bedrooms talking about blockchain, Web3 without feeling guilty or being judged by our friends.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's apt that we're bedroom bound today because we're covering one of the elephants in the room, a slightly more controversial topic that might lend itself to basement dwelling, and of course that can be nothing else than than crypto, right? So the crypto industry, I say industry in inverted commas, but you know, crypto is a phrase we've used many times in passing because it describes lots of things quite well. It's like a catch-all term, but I think today we're maybe going to get a bit more opinionated, talk about, you know, what we actually think about the crypto industry. So yeah, I don't know if you want to. How do we kick this off, Alex? Should we just give a quick? How do we feel about crypto? I mean, I don't know. Do you want to go first? Because I know you have some strong thoughts.
I don't know if it can get much stronger than your kickoff about sitting in your basement. I think you've set the tone and made your opinions quite clear. Yeah, I think anyone working in the Web3 or blockchain space has experienced this, right? It's like someone asked me what I do. I'm like, I work in Web3. What the hell's that? I work in blockchain. What the hell's that? I work in crypto. They're like, oh, one of those Ponzi schemes. Like, it's the classic. It's like everyone kind of knows a little bit about crypto, and it's very rarely positive what they do know about crypto. And you know, I was thinking about this, and on the surface, I'm annoyed. I'm like, it's not what I do. I try to, solve real world problems. I try to, develop things that will actually, have positive impact on humanity. And whenever someone hears that you work in blockchain, which is associated with crypto, they're like, oh, you're just trying to make a quick buck and run a Ponzi scheme. And I think on the surface level, that is a lot of the experience, right? But then when I was thinking about it and thinking about this episode, there are some positive impacts to the whole crypto bros. Like the fact that people know about it, is actually quite a positive thing for an emerging technology. There's no such thing as bad publicity. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, but it's good that people actually kind of have an understanding of crypto. And there's a lot of people, even if all they know is crypto and they don't understand the blockchain underpins and all the utility that can come with that, maybe they got into crypto for actually some positive reasons. And I do want to speak a little bit about the positive impact. It's not all basement dwellers.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a nice, fairly charitable summary, I think. Yeah, it's true. Like, as you say, when someone asks you what you do, and you end up saying, "Well, I work in crypto just to make it easy," they often go, "Oh, so you're a trader? So you sit around all day flipping meme coins and trying to make a quick buck?" And it's actually, this is the tarnished reputation that you have with crypto, but yeah, and people, I would say, I've been working in the blockchain field, as a researcher for over 5 years now. I wouldn't necessarily say I've been working in the crypto space even in that time. It's very different. But I'm curious, how would you actually describe crypto if you're being honest? If for the first time, let's carry on that conversation, and they go, "Oh, crypto, you're a trader, you're a Ponzi schemer, or whatever," and you go, "Actually, no, this is what crypto is." What would you say to them then?
I tend to walk away before we get to that stage because the conversation just ends. No, if someone's like, "Okay, you're a trader, you work in crypto," I usually say, "No, I'm not that. I'm a developer. Think of me as someone that works on applications or someone that's working in the internet, depending on the level of person that I'm speaking to. And then, they'll say, so, okay, maybe what do you think about cryptocurrency? I'm like, oh man, I think so many things about cryptocurrency. Like it's a misnomer, right? Like it's not a currency as most people tend to think of it. It's not a kind of a traditional state-run fiat-issued currency. And I think like the name itself has brought around a lot of issues because people see currency, they think, oh, it's stable. They think that, governments have backed it and it's regulated and all these things. And I think this has led to a lot of the issues with cryptocurrencies and people's understandings and trusting cryptocurrencies. And then if they're still listening to me at this point, the likelihood is they've probably walked away. I would say, well, actually cryptocurrency is kind of like a little piece of the blockchain, right? And it's used to, orchestrate good behavior in the blockchain. I would try and get them to listen to our tokens episode and say, okay, it's actually a little token that's used to incentivize people to act good or, exhibit good behavior on the blockchain. And, it's actually a core piece of blockchain. And, by then they've almost certainly gone. So it's like the conversation's over. But like, what would you try and say to someone then when they ask you about this stuff?
Well, I think the first thing I would normally say is like crypto and how I describe it. Crypto is this term that, like it or not, is a catch-all in the same way that AI is a catch-all for anything involving kind of automation, machine learning, deep learning, and captures all these different fields. And crypto is just a nice shorthand that has developed into what people use to refer to basically any blockchain-based, new kind of not government-backed money or token systems, that kind of thing. And I completely agree when you say it's a misnomer. And it's a misnomer on 2 counts, which I find really funny. It's like the worst word you could use because, cryptocurrency, you have crypto, which is the intention is to mean kind of cryptography. So like encrypting data, hiding messages, that kind of concepts we talked about before. Now, this was all popularized, of course, as we always say, by Bitcoin. And Bitcoin wasn't the first cryptocurrency. There are many, many more before it. You had kind of digital cash systems like DigiCash, Waydai's B-Money as a proposal. You had Liberty Reserve, as a kind of criminal version of all this. And Bitcoin came along and popularized it because it did it so well. It did digital currency, digital money. Sorry, I'm falling into the trap myself. It did digital money so well that it popularized this whole industry, and now we have so many cryptos around. But Bitcoin itself, that's the irony. It doesn't use encryption, so that's why people say, "Oh, how can you use this blockchain? It's all encrypted," and it's not encrypted. We had that slight faux pas in episode 2, I think, Alec, when we were talking about the Genesis block.
I remember.
Yeah, back in the day when we didn't know much. But yeah, so the crypto part is a misnomer because Bitcoin itself isn't encrypted. Many blockchains, Ethereum, most of the really big popular ones do not use encryption by default. And then the second term, as you said, currency. They're not actually currencies really in the traditional meaning, because currency is something that is state backed almost by definition.
Yeah,
it's fiat money is a currency really. I'm not a monetary theory expert by any means, but that's what we tend to mean. And things like Bitcoin are more like a commodity money, like as we've talked about, this old style of using commodity to pay for goods and services. It doesn't really function quite like a currency in the way that governments aren't necessarily having to issue it, but it could work as a currency if it gets adopted. Well, it could look like a currency, but it doesn't really describe them very well right now, in my opinion.
And I think like the fact that it is called a currency in a way is kind of reflective of how speculative most of the use is potentially today in a lot of the cryptocurrencies we see. And I think the big issue with that is that the measures for success or the metrics for success of cryptocurrencies are so backwards. They don't actually capture actual progress, right? It's all about networks with like large market caps. And this doesn't translate to usage or utility. Like you look at BTC, it's got a huge market cap. What is it, like 400 billion, 500 billion, something like that? I forget, it changes that every day. But does anyone actually use it? Like it was meant as an electronic monetary system, right? No one's cash system, like no one's using it day to day. And I think the fact that we've kind of defined the success of cryptocurrencies as the total market size is ridiculous. Like, that is not how technology should be measured. It should be measured in the actual people using it. So the number of transactions that are going through, like how much utility we're actually getting from that. And that's one of the biggest issues I have, I think, is that when people hear the term crypto, they think speculation, and they don't think of utility and the benefits that come with all the blockchain all the blockchain fundamentals that we've been speaking about during this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important, you mentioned utility, because that contrasts one of the big narratives around, BTC and lots of the cryptos that have followed it in the same vein, is that it's often touted as a kind of store of value. So something you can put your assets in as a safe haven. And, it really is very difficult to argue, in my opinion, that it is a good store of value, because it fluctuates so much. We saw in 2020, during the start of the COVID pandemic, I think 30 or 40% of the whole market cap across all cryptos is wiped off in like half a day. That doesn't seem like it's storing value very well. And it depends when you got in and when you might get out that determines that.
I was going to say, it's like the California gold rush, right? You have all these mines and like everyone's running there, and you think that all the miners are making money to get there once they've got there. And it's not true. It's like the miners didn't actually make that much money from the California gold rush. It was the people that were selling the equipment to the miners trying to make money who made all the money. And I feel like we're in this kind of state right now. Everyone's investing in crypto thinking it's going to make a quick buck or a big return of investment and all this kind of stuff. But really, it's the people that are selling it and the people that are facilitating the exchange of the cryptocurrencies that are making all the money right now.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, I think, to raise, because the people who have profited the most off crypto, apart from the successful Ponzi schemers and things like that, are the equipment manufacturers. I think Bitmain being one of the developers of they call them ASIC chips and machines to mine proof of work crypto. But you also have the rise of GPUs, graphics processing units, which previously, you get them, these graphics cards in your computer to run high performance games. You think of, again, a gamer in their bedroom with a nice big personalized computer. They will have their own custom GPUs, and Nvidia has seen like unbelievable growth in the last few years because of so many cryptocurrencies using this slightly lower energy intensive, but more affordable, in quotes, kind of mining, where GPUs are practical to use, and they are raking it in. Like, there's a huge shortage in GPUs now across the gaming industry, and because of the rise of crypto.
Yeah, and there is definitely something to be said about like the holding of value. I think there's like over 300 million people right now own crypto around the world. And imagine if you live somewhere like Zimbabwe or Argentina, and the currency that your government backs is experiencing hyperinflation. Like, the value is depreciating every single day. I think one of the stats around like Zimbabwe, the peak of like hyperinflation was that the value of currency was halving every 24 hours. Imagine being someone in that country and like you say, I don't believe in the fiat system that we have set up right now. I don't believe in the government. I don't trust in all these kind of measures. And you look at something like, obviously, the first thing you think is inflation is bad, right? I'm against inflation because I think it directly negatively affects the poorest in society, because they have, say, maybe it's the most difficult for them to invest. Like, I think it's like poor people in society can invest in like classic bonds and publicly listed shares and bonds, but they don't have access to certain type of assets. You immediately say, okay, the poorest disadvantaged, they're taking the brunt of the hyperinflation. Why wouldn't they invest in something that's anti-inflationary? Why wouldn't they invest in something like Bitcoin? Although I disagree with it to an extent, I think it shouldn't be used as a store of value. Like you say, it fluctuates a lot and all this kind of stuff. I do understand the sell. And I could imagine if I was in this position, like being from Argentina or Zimbabwe, I would invest. I would see this as a means to kind of store value and actually appreciate value over time. And it's like I say, it democratizes investment, or that's the sell anyway, is that anyone can invest in these. There's no kind of limitation to entry or threshold to entry for these kind of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, yeah, this fact that lots of cryptocurrencies are marketed, and again, we can maybe touch on some of the core properties, or like again, a lot of this is philosophical about what crypto is, because to different people it means different things. We say that all the time, and one of those that you mentioned is being anti-inflationary, or sometimes they'll say disinflationary or deflationary. So that instead of what we see, and again, the narrative has been furthered by the last few years with so much money printing in America and across the world. the value of the money in your pocket in fiat currency is going down in terms of purchasing power, with inflation being so high. And a huge part of that sell of crypto has classically been, a fixed supply, right? That is one of the core things that many people have got into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies purely on the back of the fixed supply supposed guarantee. Now I think we'll come on to that in the future, whether that's a clad iron guarantee, because I don't think it necessarily is. You're seeing actually some talk in BTC at the minute about potentially raising that cap to make it economical. But putting that aside, that is one of the characteristics. But there are others that I think characterize, what is crypto to most people. So another one would be obviously decentralization. There's a big anarchistic flavor. You said the non-government issued money. A lot of people who don't trust classical institutions, governments, like that it's a money not run by a government. And also the anonymity side, right? So that people kind of consider these coins to be anonymous, and there's a lot of debate to be had around how anonymous they are. I kind of take the view that they are more like pseudonymous. So they're not anonymous because you have certain information recorded, and it's not impossible to link identity to cryptocurrency if you want. We talked in a recent episode about CoffeeZilla linking identities of people to Ethereum addresses and things like that. And it's back to that point. It's not encrypted, which means it's not kind of purely anonymous. But that is a big draw for people as well, because people just think it's anonymous. Lots of criminals have tried to use crypto in the last kind of 10 years, thinking anonymity is this really useful property, when maybe it's not actually there for lots of them.
Which is mad, because when we're talking about blockchain, one of the main words we use to sell it is transparency, right? It's all about it being out there. Anyone could publicly access this kind of stuff. But like you said, like it's pseudonymous. That's the one. That's such a difficult word to say. It gets me every time.
Yeah, it's impossible.
To those 3 points then. So the first one was inflationary versus deflationary, right? And I always kind of contended with this. Like, I get it. We live in this society where everyone's specialized. You earn a wage. And it seems a bit bonkers that, earning your wage, if you just earn your money every month, that money depreciates over time. So you also say, on top of, being a laborer or working as a dentist, you also need to understand assets and financial services to keep up with the pace of inflation in society, to make sure the money you're earning, is actually matched to what's going on in the economy. And this always kind of blew my mind. It seemed kind of anti-capitalistic in a way, that you specialize in a career to add to society, but then you also need to have a basic understanding of investments and how to grow your portfolio and all this kind of stuff to keep up with the rate of pace of society. And I kind of get the deflationary kind of angle against that. Say, well, don't do that, make it deflationary, store value. But then I guess what you would say is the whole point of capitalism is you invest in the future and you hope that the future is more prosperous. So you invest in betting on the future being gains, and that's how you get growth, and constant growth is good. Whether that's true or not, it's up for debate.
Yeah, I think for me, I also can see the argument for why deflationary currency or kind of non-inflationary, I kind of would normally say, money is useful, because for starters it's apolitical, so it's not the whims of any group of people necessarily for a term of 4 or 5 years or 10 years or something like that. So yeah, it's not quite affected by fiscal policy in the same way that governments can just go and print money, and it's a real thing, right? Everyone is struggling with inflation, so having something that doesn't have that, and as you said, the hyperinflation cases, there's an obvious reason to go to what we call cryptocurrencies, for better or worse, because another problem people levy is this isn't a good store of value, this is not necessarily deflationary because of the volatility. If you're measuring it in dollar terms or dollar denominated terms, then the volatility is really bad. But in some of those countries, it's still comparable or even better than you get there. And all of this is at the minute because, frankly, no crypto, including Bitcoin, is big enough yet to be global money and to be a kind of a unit of measure or unit of account, for value, really, in a meaningful way, because everyone is measuring their purchasing power in dollars still, or one of the big currencies. So when you say deflationary, you basically mean with respect to the dollar, which is being constantly inflated, it looks deflationary. You get better purchasing power. You buy more dollars per per BTC, for example. But will we ever get to a? Do you think we'll ever get to a stage where you don't have to compare the price of a crypto to a fiat-backed currency? Do you think it can ever get there and act more like an actual currency?
Oh, I don't understand, because we compare all currencies to dollar, right? I can't imagine. I understand what you're saying is that right now the association is so based on speculation that we are always comparing things in terms of dollar value, be it market cap or be it the price of one Bitcoin versus dollars and all this kind of stuff. Like, I am hoping, and this is, we're experiencing a crypto winter right now, which most people who are involved in the crypto space see as a bad thing, right? Because they've lost loads of money. But I've seen more people who work on the development and utility side kind of seeing it as a bit of a purge, which is probably good for the ecosystem. You get rid of the people that are purely here to flip, a quick buck or, speculate and Ponzi schemes and all this kind of stuff. And you get like the kind of the essential core that are actually developing real world applications and trying to take the use of these so-called cryptocurrencies to actually add value to society and work for everyday people. And that's a big thing, is that the original white paper, I mean, this is a bit of conjecture, but it seemed like it was targeted, in my mind anyway, towards people making small everyday cash payments, right? And we're not seeing that anymore. When you look at like the people that actually own like BTC and the big cryptos, it's like, it tends to be big investment people, like people that are already millionaires, just trying to make self-perpetuate their own wealth. And it's meant for an everyday cash system. For micro incentives seem to be more like targeted towards the poorest in society, and that's just not how they're being deployed right now. And from a philosophical standpoint, that really does upset me.
Yeah, I am kind of on the same lines as that. Like, and you have this real chicken and egg problem in the adoption of crypto because it is so speculatory. And if you had to say in one word what is crypto, I'd say speculation, because it's just a vehicle for speculation across the board, right? And a good example of this, which I think this story really doesn't help in terms of adoption of crypto, because it makes people want to hold or hodl. It's about time we said hodl on the show, which everyone says as this meme to hold your crypto and never, buy it. They could say hashtag stack sats, stack satoshis, which are the base unit in Bitcoin. They say, just going to stack sats. I'm going to hold it until I'm a millionaire. This time next year, Rodney will be millionaires. But this story that I'm referring to is Bitcoin Pizza Day. Are you familiar with this? I feel like you must be, because everyone knows this one.
I don't know, man. I'm not as heavily involved in the space as you are.
Really?
Give me some. Yeah, give me the lowdown.
You can see I've been in this game longer than you. Okay. So I can't remember how long ago it was now. It must have been at least 8 years ago or something. I should have really checked which year. But the very first, what was considered the first ever financial transaction for real world goods of Bitcoin was this guy called Laszlo Heinich. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. But he actually bought a pizza or 2 pizzas. Guess how much he paid for them at the time in BTC?
I think I think we factored this before. Like BT, was it like 1 BTC or something like that? But that was like, I don't know, at the time it was like $100, and now it's worth like whatever it is now, like $40,000 or something.
It's worse than you think, Alec. I'm gonna shock you. It was 10,000 BTC. So
wow.
at the time he bought these 2 pizzas, it was $30. And I just checked before we came on, and today that's 270 million, or would have been 648 million at peak. So
wow.
It's crazy. And this kind of story is what people think of. They think, oh, if I just get in early, I'll make millions, but I think we're beyond that point now. But people still think that kind of speculation can work, which is crazy to me.
It's just like they say, it's like the gold rush. It's like those people early on in the first 5 to 6 years compared to now. Yeah, they've made a lot of money, the people that have held. But it's like, this is why I understand the Ponzi scheme stuff. Like the people at the start, they make the most amount of money because they're building on top of other people who are investing. And it's the people that are lasting and the rug is swept from underneath them that lose all their money. And the people that gained, make the most of that and kind of capitalize on those issues. And like the lack of regulation around this crypto space makes that far easier to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think they call it greater fool theory, right? Is this term they use to describe why do people keep falling for Ponzi schemes? Where you keep bringing more people in, it's a pyramid, and it will collapse. And actually, one of this theory is that people just assume they're not the bottom of the pyramid. They think they are cleverer than the average, and they'll be somewhere nearer the top of the pyramid, and they can get out before it falls apart. Everyone thinks they're a clever investor, that they are, and you have these massive social kind of networking effects that somehow cause these things to keep happening. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about FTX later when we kind of consider the downsides, but we keep seeing these things recurring. We're already seeing talks of an FTX 2.0, which just blows my mind. I can't believe that's going to happen.
We're just not learning from these mistakes. So speaking of people that think they're above average intelligence, I think the next term that I want to come on to, which I'm going to pull in our friend ChatGPT to help me define, just to have a nice neutral standpoint on this, is crypto bro. Like, I get labeled with this all the time. Like, my friends, they know it really like pushes my buttons when someone says, "What do you do?" And then my friend will share over from across the room, like, "He's a crypto bro. Don't talk to him about his job," that kind of stuff. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm not a crypto bro." But yeah, for those at home who don't know what this is, a crypto bro is a colloquial that emerged from the cryptocurrency and blockchain communities. It refers to individuals, typically men, who are overly enthusiastic or zealous about cryptocurrencies, especially in a way that's perceived as shallow, unsophisticated, or opportunistic. Wow. Okay.
I feel
That's
seen.
quite
I
funny.
feel seen.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that fit into that bucket, right? I hope to God that I'm not one of them. My friends don't see me as that, but I do know a lot of people in the crypto space that fit into that bucket. Like, I see them on social media all the time posting about, the next big scheme that everyone needs to get onto, and you ask them, what is it? Why is there value? And they're like, it's just like decentralized, man. It's transparent, man. It's immutable. And you're like, okay, what does that actually mean? How does that compare with other technologies? And they're like, it's just, I don't know, ask the tech guys. You're like, oh God, come on, just a crypto bro.
Yeah, I think there was always a risk of being perceived as one of these crypto bros and being in that culture when you're two blokes starting a podcast about Web3. It could, I mean, because a lot of podcasts out there are there to pump someone's bags, as we say. So yeah, it's I mean, I guess it's worth mentioning the kind of the community around crypto. It's, in my opinion, again, I've been in it for 5 years observing mainly, but crypto Twitter is its own thing, right? It's known widely as the worst portion of Twitter in many ways. It's got some of the worst discourse. It's so tribal. It's like football on steroids. Everyone has got their own camp, and they're so financially incentivized to have certain opinions about different coins and different cryptos and different blockchains that, yeah, it's hideous out there. Like, I can barely open Twitter now. I don't know about you. If you've been here, not as long, you won't have as bad a Twitter feed as me right now.
I'm not in that space. Like, I'm completely off Twitter. I just found it so, there was just so many trolls on there, like, not targeted at me, but like, it's like the spam, the trolls, the negativity, like, it was horrible. So I'm off it. But for reference, everyone at home, Jack most days will come and be like, "Have you seen this thing on Twitter?" And I'm like kept up to date through Jack, I think. So yeah, I'm aware of this, and it's bad. Like, it's just so negative, man. It's like religious zealotism, like what it's at right these days, right? And it's just, I don't understand. It's just technology. It's like, why are people getting so fundamental and kind of philosophical about these things?
Because it's because there's people have got too much skin in the game, right? The incentives are so. Again, this is part of the interesting thing about Bitcoin and all these cryptocurrencies and I'm just going to say right now, right? I use crypto begrudgingly as a term. It's just useful. It's quicker, right, than saying Bitcoin and blockchain all the time. So that's one of these issues with all these crypto tokens, is that anytime you get a new one, someone is financially incentivized to pump it, to build a community around it, because a lot of the time, you have this ICO mechanism. I think they died out a little bit, but I think they still exist in kind of under different terms. This initial coin offering, back in 2016, 17, even when I started working in like 2018, 19, this was a really popular mechanism for raising funds and raising capital to do something, or supposedly to do something as a business, instead of looking for venture capital and trying to raise via the classic routes. You would instead launch a token that is used, that's a token that is required for your business to operate, and the founders would get 50% of the supply, right? So it's like if Satoshi had just taken 10 million Bitcoins for himself, and then told everyone else to buy them. Obviously, the incentive is for them to grow that community, to pump the token price. And that whole concept is used in popular culture now. It's in things like Silicon Valley, the TV show. I couldn't believe it when it got into that. I was like, geez, we've gone full circle now. What about like specific people, right? In the crypto bro world, are there any people you would know of as good examples of this? Because I know we saw the meme in 2021, the laser eyes cult, right? That was an easy way to spot a crypto bro in 2021, when everyone was like, it's going to the moon, Bitcoin's at 60K, it's going to 1 million. Who are the worst offenders for you?
I literally couldn't even name any. Like, I am so far removed from the crypto bro space. Like, I know people associate me with that, but I do think of myself as a techie, and like I feel like the Venn diagram between techies and crypto bros is really limited. I think, like, you're talking about these philosophies between crypto bros being like, because obviously they have skin in the game. When techies tend to have this conversation, it's like, what's the superior tech? You tend to have a logical discussion about this stuff. Whereas, like you say, when it's crypto bros, because it's like such a high level and they don't really understand what they're selling properly, it's very much just like, mine's better than yours is better than mine. It just kind of devolves into a throwing contest, I guess, like, for want of a better word. But I actually can't name a single crypto bro. Like, go on, you've got to know. You've been in the space for a long time. You follow all the crypto Twitter and the crypto Reddits and everything else. Who are the worst offenders for this?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot, and it's harder to name them now because it's a crypto winter, and people have got a lot quieter about this. If I was to name one or two, I think one would definitely be Michael Saylor, who is actually a relative newcomer, right? Best newcomer in the Crypto Bro Awards. But he's only been kind of active in the space for a couple of years now, again, 2020, 21. But he kind of embodies, in my opinion, the techno babble side of crypto culture and crypto Twitter, where there's a huge amount of words said to say very little at all. Talks about one of the classic memes is magic internet money, and then extrapolating that to talk about how Bitcoin is physics, and how Bitcoin is monetized energy and stuff like that, and it just gets super meta. I can't listen to any of that. I think he's a good example. Another one might be like the Winklevoss twins, right? I think they're a good example. They're not so happy with what happened with Facebook, so their second big gamble is to go big on crypto. And I think they're very similar, right? It's kind of the classic Giga Chad vibes, crypto people.
Honestly, you come up with these terms, I'm so far removed from these terms, they just kill me. Half the time I have to Google like what you're saying, like Giga Chad, I've not heard before.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's crazy, and like I do try and remove myself as much as possible from that world. You can't avoid it, to be honest, a lot of the time. Although crypto winter's helping, to be frank. But yeah, so rather than just being fully disparaging about crypto, is there anything positive we can say? I don't want to be completely negative. Like, is there anything in your mind that is a redeeming quality of the crypto industry? Like, what's it done in a positive light?
I think what I was saying before around there's no such thing as bad publicity. I think a lot of people came to the Web3 space because of the term crypto. And maybe it was to make a quick buck. Maybe it was like, venture capitalists that were trying to get into investing companies to make a quick buck, whatever it was. And they probably quickly realized, if they actually did the due diligence on this stuff, that there was a lot of noise, there was a lot of BS. And I assumed that despite that, maybe it's because they had skin in the game already, they stayed there to find the utility and to find the people that were actually working on the fundamental technologies that could actually, benefit society. So I think that's the one element. It gets a lot of publicity. People think they want to make lots of money. The news headlines are always saying, "Oh, Bitcoin's the worst thing in the world. Ethereum's the worst thing in the world." All this kind of stuff. And then, through that, people are like, "Oh, what is this? This is interesting." And then say if like 1% of the people who hear this terrible news are like, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna do a little bit of digging." 1% of that 1%, then like, "Oh, there's actually a lot of good technology here. This is very interesting." And then 1% of that start working on it. I think that brings a lot of people to the space. Like whatever you say is like the people that do fundamentally understand the basics of cryptocurrency, understand the fundamentals of blockchain, hopefully as well, and they can start to apply that to different applications, and that could come up with real world use cases that go beyond, the speculative nature of cryptocurrency that we've talked about. So that is a big thing for me, is that it is popularizing something probably in the wrong light, but bringing people in anyway who can then hopefully see the light and try to build applications with utility on top of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I'm of the same mind that like the very fundamental core of something like Bitcoin is a fundamentally positive thing. Like if we did have a global digital cash that didn't rely on any one government, I think that's strictly better than fiat currencies that do rely on a government. And when I say strictly better, I mean I think it's better that we have the alternative, right? That we have some kind of backup currency, right? Because if you think of if you have a country with a despotic leader where people have to flee, or a country's economy just goes down the toilet out of nowhere and goes into hyperinflation, it's good to have a kind of reserve asset that isn't subject to that, and is kind of, I think the ultimate state for something like Bitcoin is that it could grow as large as something like the US dollar and beyond, and it becomes like the global reserve currency. I think that would be great. And I don't think it will get there without being used as money. I don't think it gets there just by being a store of value, because, as we've seen in BTC, it's just too expensive to use it when with the model they employ. So I think the actual overarching goal of Bitcoin should be to become a really good reserve money. And when it is a reserve money, just like the dollar, it should act as a pretty good store of value. It should act as a pretty good exchange. It should have all these functions that we want it to have. But it's just a long way off that.
I was going to say, I think one thing that's kind of related to that as well is through governments kind of, understanding the fundamentals of blockchain through all, people in their countries using cryptocurrency, but then also having the fear that all the people in their country are now using cryptocurrency. I think this is going to lead to a whole new world of CBDCs, which I think will add a lot of value to society. Like we're seeing like 80% of countries around the world are now considering CBDCs. Like it blows my mind that we don't have like CBDC already. Like how much of our economy is based in the digital world? How can we not have a government-backed digital currency to actually operate in these spaces? I think, CBDCs in a similar way are something positive that's going to come out of all this crypto speculation BS.
Yeah, and also all the other stuff that we talk about with blockchain specifically, and we haven't mentioned at all with the crypto discussion already, but the immutability, data integrity, anchoring digital ID, all these other useful applications that we've talked about for weeks now. We don't get the best form of those, i.e. like true immutability, true transparency. We don't get any of those benefits and those use cases coming about unless at least one public blockchain, which requires at least one crypto token to work, scales, right? We need one to succeed. And we literally won't get those without the success story of at least one crypto. So, it has to be a good thing. I just think in the, in the current state of, how I did have a check before, I've got it written down. It's something like, here we go, 23,000 cryptos have been made. About 8,000 of those are still active, but it's crazy. We don't need 8,000 currencies on top of fiat currencies. It's crazy.
I think this is one of the things where you're talking about success. We need one cryptocurrency to succeed. And like I said, the metrics for crypto are so incorrect right now. It shouldn't be measured in market cap. It shouldn't be how much value is being held. It should be how many people are using it day to day, like how many transactions are actually being used by everyday users. That should be the metric for success of these cryptocurrencies. And I think that kind of mindset really has to change in the space.
Yeah, I think they refer to it as the velocity of money, right? You have to have a high velocity. So how frequently is it transacted? But also, what's the volume? So what's the total amount of money being transacted, flows in and out of the system or within the system per day? I think that they're the important metrics that, we want to consider. I I guess another thing I'd say about, positive of crypto is that it has such a low barrier to entry that it does allow things to get off the ground more easily, because good ideas done well can start making money from day one. You've seen things like Uniswap. That's just a great idea implemented and executed really well, and it's not like $1 billion company, right? And it serves a market need. It does it very well, and there was virtually zero barrier to entry, which is great.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good thing. Like, say what you want about the scalability of Ethereum, it operates as a platform that people can build on very easily, which is, we didn't really have that before. And there's a high barrier. It's much less so now to build like a classic Web 2 app. But in Web 3, there's a barrier of education and understanding. But the barrier to monetizing a Web 3 app, I think that's what I want to say, is much, much lower than monetizing a Web 2 app in the historical world, which is, that's good. I think good ideas can succeed in that model.
Yeah, and I think that it's like the democratization of investing on wealth management, right, or wealth gain. Like, people can get more readily into the space because there's lower barriers to entry. On the flip side of that, that's why we have all these Ponzi schemes and people losing a lot of money, because there's little regulation. And I think on the whole, how does crypto succeed? And we want crypto to be successful and all this kind of stuff. I think we need to see a lot more. Everyone says this. We need to see a lot more regulation in the space. And the anarchists who are in crypto will hate this kind of stuff. And I think it's probably a good thing they hate this kind of stuff, because regulation needs to happen. Like, for these technologies to be adopted safely and securely and adopted by the masses, we need regulation. We need government approval to say, yeah, this, Bitcoin, we approve this, get on it, use this exchange, use this wallet, everything's good. And you will get that adoption and that kind of utility and usage in everyday life. And I think the regulation needs to come for all this to be successful, and something that I think a lot of people, especially the crypto bros and the super chads, whatever they're called, will resist, but it's got to come, right?
Yeah, 100%. As we said it before, regulation is absolutely key. And if I was to, if I had one word to describe crypto, I would say speculation. If I had two words, I'd call it the Wild West, because it's been a lawless kind of thing for the last, God knows what, as long as it's been a thing. And that kind of brings us on to the negative aspects, right, which are pretty obvious. I mean, this is the stuff you'd know about as a kind of just anyone in society has probably a mostly bad depiction of what crypto is, for obvious reasons. All the pump and dump scams. You've had all those ICOs I mentioned, the Ponzi schemes, people pumping NFTs. I mentioned before, celebrities endorsing NFTs to make a quick buck and essentially abusing their position of power. And you've got all these different lawsuits coming now against social media influencers for doing this kind of stuff. I mean, it has just been a complete kind of cesspit, which has not had proper oversight. And we are starting to see a bit of that now in the US, but it's still very unclear with what's happening with the SEC and the CFTC starting to take action somewhere, but not quite applying them across the board. So yeah, I think a lot of the real losers are retail investors at the end of the day, people who put their money in, and that you can find millions of stories at this point of people who've lost life savings to investing in crypto and losing it all.
And I think, like we said, that crypto in a way has brought a percentage into the light of the benefits of Web3 and blockchain. But I think a lot of these like big negative stunts have really affected blockchain and the Web3 space, because most people, when they hear that and you pitch Web3 and the benefits of blockchain, they think crypto, it's a Ponzi scheme straight away. Even if you're developing an application that's got nothing to do with cryptocurrency, or at least on the surface, it's got nothing to do with cryptocurrency. And I think this is a massive negative effect of crypto. It's like kind of anyone who's working in Web3 probably has experienced this baggage on them, right? And it does get difficult at times.
Yeah, it's what it's what they always say about new technologies are will be used for good and for ill. The car, when it was invented, was used by criminals, and then it was used by the police to chase the criminals. Like it can be used in both ways. And I think the example that everyone will know about now is FTX, right? What happened with that last year, and the alleged goings on there, with now an 8 billion hole in missing customer funds that were being allegedly commingled between Alameda Research and FTX. It's crazy, because that do you remember the Super Bowl in 2020? Would it be 21 or 22? 22?
Or the fact that when they're sponsoring it or doing ads for it or something.
Yeah, it was the Super Bowl where basically every halftime ad was crypto, and FTX had bought like a 10-year license or something to sponsor a stadium. It was all over the shirts everywhere, and then you had this advert. And really sadly, I was sad to see Larry David involved in this. Have you seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, Alec?
No.
No, it's one of my absolute all-time favorite shows. It's like one of my favorite comedians, and he had kind of famously never done an advert in his life until this Super Bowl advert for FTX. And it wasn't just him; it was Tom Brady. There were so many big names advertising for this, and effectively giving the green light to investors to say, "Hey, go and put your money in this." And to be fair, at the time, Sam Bankman-Fried, the kind of CEO of FTX, was like the darling. He was the golden boy, the good, acceptable face of crypto at the time, and completely endorsed by so many institutions. Had massive backing from huge investors who would normally be very shrewd, and ended up writing off their investment completely. It just shows how bad it can be in an environment like this, where the regulation isn't well defined. And at the end of the day, again, it's always retail investors who are left holding the bag when things go wrong, which is by far the biggest problem we've got with crypto.
Yeah, I wonder if are there any lawsuits that kind of came about from that. Obviously, not just at FTX, but all the celebrities that endorsed it and all this kind of stuff. Like, I imagine they had to do their due diligence and just didn't, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is maybe a class action against a bunch of influencers. I don't know if it's just related to FTX, but obviously Sam Bankman-Fried himself is currently, I think, living on bail somewhere. And is going to be, I think, is going to trial sometime in the next 9 months or something like that. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with that. But as I said, FTX 2.0 is being discussed again, and another example would be Luna. That's I said earlier, Uniswap's a great kind of decentralized finance protocol that is a good idea executed well and has done well. Then you had Terra Luna, which was this algorithmic stable coin, which was meant to kind of keep the stable value of the coin by having this 2-token system, and using an algorithm to keep the price the same. And that completely collapsed, triggering huge financial losses for so many people. And that, they've gone to a 2.0 as well. It's crazy that we keep getting it happen. I just don't see a way out until the regulators kind of really start cracking down on it.
Well, regulation is always laggard to technology, right? So it's going to take a while for them to catch up. I think one other negative impact that I've seen, and this is kind of like what the promise of cryptocurrencies were meant to be. Like, they were meant to be these, more efficient versions of, cash or digital cash or electronic cash, however you want to describe it, that didn't have unnecessary intermediaries. So you assume that the transaction costs were lower. And you look at like the transaction costs of Ethereum or BTC right now, it's costing like $40, $50 to send anything at any time. Like, it's crazy. And I think the negative impact of that is most people assume that that is what cryptocurrency is. And it was never meant to be like that. And I think it's a real, like, it's quite sad, to be honest, to see that this is like how that's kind of ended up. And it was never intended to be like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the crypto industry, I got to use the quotation marks, has really lost its way from kind of the humble beginnings of Bitcoin and wanting to be digital cash. I think it's a real mess now, with some really promising things in it. Like, there are diamonds in the rough. But looking to the future, I guess it's just a question of how many will genuinely provide value for millions, billions of people in the future. I mean, we mentioned we need at least one coin to survive, I think, to anchor all these actual utility applications we talk about on the show. Do you think one is enough? Do you think we should be, is there a healthy number? Because if we're going from 8,000 right now, what's the happy medium, do you think?
It's hard. Like, I think there's this whole thing around when you look at traditional financial systems, like it kind of lends itself to centralization in a way. Like you have like four payment merchants that operate in the US, and the reason for that is you don't want to have 50 different payment merchants or 1,000, because then you have to whip out different cards for different machines, and interoperability and consistency becomes difficult. So I really doubt there'll be many. I think what's the classic that got Bitcoin is the gold and Ethereum is the oil, or whatever it is, something like this. I imagine there'll be like 2 to 3 or something like this in the next 10 years. And things like crypto winters, like a lot of people like say, we keep saying here, they think it's a bad thing, but like I say, it does hopefully emphasize the diamonds in the rough, in the same way that the dot-com bubble, everyone thought it was going to be the failure of the internet, but really it just found the businesses that actually had the kind of, I guess, the metal to succeed, right? And I'm hoping that's going to happen during this crypto winter, if not this one, maybe the next one.
Yeah, if you say Ethereum's the oil, which ones are the snake oil? That's my question. But
oh, nice.
Maybe for another episode. So yeah, I think I've got everything off my chest for now about crypto. I think that was pretty cathartic. But it's nice to talk about this kind of thing once in a while, I think.
This is like a therapy session for you. I can see that you're like raging red right now for the people that can't see Jack. But yeah, it was good. This was an interesting one. I just want to thank you all for listening wherever you may be, and we'll see you next time to untangle a little more of Web3. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Untangling Web3, produced by Emma Camilleri.
Don't forget to send us your thoughts, questions, and comments on social media, and be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast provider to catch the next episode. See you next time to untangle a little bit more of Web3.
The views we express here are our own and do not reflect the views of our employers.